The PGA Tour committed over $1 billion in inflated prize funds to win a bitter financial war against LIV Golf, but the boardroom executives completely failed to ask themselves what happens when the war ends and the bill comes due. Rumors are circulating heavily that the Saudi Public Investment Fund is pulling its backing from LIV after 2026, leaving the rival league scrambling to raise hundreds of millions just to survive. By all traditional metrics, the PGA Tour has outlasted the insurgency. Yet, behind closed doors in Ponte Vedra Beach, the financial reality is grim. The tour is bleeding out from the self-inflicted wounds of that exact same conflict. To stave off defections, the tour's ultimate defense mechanism was the creation of the signature event model, a series of $20 million purses designed to guarantee that the absolute best players in the world would tee it up in the same fields, week in and week out. The corporate math was remarkably simple. Pay the independent contractors enough money, and they will unconditionally show up to entertain the masses. That entire economic architecture was built on the assumption that wealth dictates loyalty. That leverage has completely and spectacularly evaporated right before our eyes. We are currently watching the game's biggest needle movers casually look at multi-million-dollar payouts and walk away without a second thought. Viktor Hovland, a past champion at the Memorial Tournament who used a victory at Muirfield Village to jumpstart a FedEx Cup title run, formally withdrew from Jack Nicklaus's iconic event just 48 hours after his commitment was announced. Hovland is not an isolated incident. He is a symptom of a much larger, systemic boycott led by the face of the sport himself. Rory McIlroy has gone completely radio silent, systematically skipping the RBC Heritage, the Zurich Classic, the massive Cadillac Championship at Trump Doral, and blowing past his obligations to Jack Nicklaus at the Memorial. McIlroy is operating strictly on his own terms, doing the bare minimum required by his contract. This is not a story about load management or fatigue. This is a story about a catastrophic breakdown in the PGA Tour's leverage over its own product. The financial carrot no longer works on players who have transcended the need for it. What's up, true students of the game? If you want real golf analysis, deep dive boardroom truths, and absolutely no clickbait, hit that subscribe button. Let's tear apart the balance sheet that is currently giving CEO Brian Rolapp absolute nightmares. The PGA Tour structured its entire television rights package and corporate sponsorship tiers around the ironclad promise of star-studded fields at these elevated stops. Corporate partners bought into this $20 million premium product, believing they were purchasing guaranteed access to McIlroy, Hovland, Scheffler, and Thomas. Now those same corporate executives are watching their investments burn as the tour's biggest draw systematically dismantles that promise by adhering only to the floor requirements of his contract. The financial fallout is not hypothetical. It is happening in real time on the schedule. The Century in Hawaii, a flagship $20 million event, is already canceled for 2026 due to regional water rights issues, but more alarmingly, foundational anchors like the Sony Open have lost their long-term title sponsors. Whispers around the industry suggest up to 4 more events are currently on the chopping block as Rolapp desperately attempts to trim the fat from a bloated calendar. The tour essentially engineered a hyperinflationary economy to outspend the Saudi PIF. They artificially inflated the purse size of regular events to major championship levels, assuming the independent contractor status of their players could be overridden by sheer capital. It was a panic move that locked the PGA Tour enterprises into astronomical operating costs without securing the legal mechanisms to actually mandate attendance. The flaw in the model is glaringly obvious today. Players like McIlroy and Hovland have reached a wealth threshold where the marginal utility of another $4 million winner's check is functionally zero. They do not need the money, which means the tour has lost its only tool of persuasion. The tour built an entire ecosystem dependent on voluntary participation, and they are now paralyzed because they cannot force their biggest assets onto the tee box to appease the sponsors writing the checks. When your business model relies on sponsor exemptions and corporate hospitality tents to fund a billion-dollar payroll, the absence of your singular global superstar is a fatal blow to the ROI. The tour overspent to win a war that is already ending, and they are left holding a massive invoice for a product that the stars no longer feel obligated to support. The hypocrisy permeating the locker room and specifically echoing through the halls of the Player Advisory Council (PAC) is staggering when you trace the timeline back just 3 years. Back in 2023, Rory McIlroy was the undisputed loudest voice in the room advocating for the elevated event model. He stood in front of microphones, took the PR bullets for the tour, and insisted that the best players must play in the same tournaments to maximize the value of the television product. Fast forward to 2026, and McIlroy's actions directly contradict the very system he helped weaponize. By skipping marquee events and flatly stating on PGA Tour radio that he will only play his minimum events, he is handing every elite player on tour a permission slip to prioritize their own schedules over the health of the ecosystem. The contradiction is so blatant that fans and fellow players alike are pulling up his old quotes, pointing out that he sold them on a promise he is now actively breaking. Viktor Hovland's sudden withdrawal from Muirfield Village just days after committing is a direct downstream effect of this cultural shift. Hovland won the Memorial. It was the catalyst for his tour championship run. Yet he is completely fine abandoning a loaded field after a missed cut at the PGA Championship. When the defending champions and generational talents stop treating these flagship events as mandatory, the prestige of the entire circuit evaporates overnight. The rank-and-file members are watching this unfold with deep, simmering resentment. The guys grinding near the cut line, fighting for their livelihoods, see the tour bending over backwards to enrich a top tier that won't even show up to support the events that fund the operation. Players like Kim Joo-hyung are already publicly noting that they want the exact same scheduling freedom that McIlroy is exercising. This dynamic is creating an irreparable fracture in locker room chemistry. The middle class of the tour realizes that the $20 million purses were funded by cutting field sizes and sacrificing their playing opportunities, all to appease stars who are now taking indefinite breaks. The tour desperately needed unity to survive the post-LIV landscape, but instead they have cultivated an environment of extreme individualism where loyalty to the Shield is officially dead. To truly understand why these elite ball strikers are sitting out, you have to look beyond the bank accounts and analyze the physical and mechanical toll of modern course setup. Viktor Hovland's withdrawal isn't just a scheduling quirk. It is a direct result of mechanical exhaustion and tactical self-preservation. After missing the cut at the PGA Championship, Hovland and his team know exactly what the data says. His smash factor, club path, and rotational timing are slightly misaligned. Playing Muirfield Village when your iron game isn't peaking is a recipe for deep psychological and physical damage. Jack's Place is notoriously penal. The rough is thick, the fairways demand shaping the golf ball both ways, and the greens require incredibly precise apex control on approach shots to hold the putting surfaces. Taking a flawed golf swing into that specific agronomic test will destroy a player's strokes gained, approach metrics, and completely shatter their confidence heading into the US Open. McIlroy is playing an identical physical chess match. By skipping the grueling $20 million stops, he is preserving his nervous system, his lower back, and his rotational speed strictly for the majors. He executed this strategy perfectly prior to Augusta, resting for weeks before arriving fresh enough to secure the green jacket. His results prove that peak biomechanical performance requires strategic dormancy. The television broadcasts refuse to acknowledge this physiological reality. The modern golf swing is violent. When you combine those extreme kinematic sequences with ultra-punitive setups mandated by tournament directors desperately trying to protect par, the tour becomes unsustainable for 25 weeks a year. The superintendents are growing the rough and firming the greens to combat distance, but they are inadvertently forcing the smartest players to simply stay home. The stars are strictly optimizing their strokes gained for 4 specific weeks a year. They view the rest of the tour calendar as an inconvenient exhibition that offers nothing but mechanical risk. If playing a signature event threatens to introduce a two-way miss into Rory or Viktor's driver swing, they will skip it every single time, regardless of the purse size or the sponsor's demands. So where does this leave PGA Tour enterprises as we head into the defining stretch of the 2026 season? They are stranded on an incredibly expensive island of their own making. LIV Golf might be dying a slow, underfunded death, but the PGA Tour absorbed fatal financial blows to beat them. They are locked into astronomical purse obligations without the guaranteed star power required to justify the television rights fees to the networks. Scottie Scheffler is an absolute machine, a generational ball striker, but his quiet dominance does not move the needle for casual sports fans the way McIlroy's dramatic, decade-long narrative does. When Rory takes an indefinite break, the tour is left trying to sell a product built around guys named Lou to a rapidly declining viewership base. Non-major ratings have been sliding for years, and removing the main character from the script only accelerates the death spiral. The uncomfortable truth that the boardroom refuses to leak is that the PGA Tour no longer controls professional golf. The top 5 players in the world do. And right now, those players are definitively proving that no amount of elevated prize money can buy their loyalty to a flawed, grueling system. The financial carrot has rotted, and the tour has no stick to replace it with. The tour spent billions to prove they were the premier destination in golf, only to realize that the players view them as just another optional stop on their personal calendars. Every skipped event by a major champion is a stark reminder that the tour is merely a platform, not an authority. The product is fundamentally broken when the stars outgrow the stage. What is the actual solution for Brian Rolapp and the tour executives? Can they restructure the independent contractor model to legally mandate participation? Or is the $20 million signature event experiment officially dead in the water? Drop your boardroom strategies in the comments below, because the entire financial model of professional golf is currently on life support, and nobody at the top has a cure.